As I comb the news today, trying to understand what exactly is going on, I'm struck by the concept between the signal and the noise, right? The signal is the truth of what's going on, and the noise is all the variation all around us. And that, like, it's hard to wrap your mind around it and really unpack this. So we're going to start here. We're going to talk about, and I'm going to widen my screen. Uh, I'm looking at ground news, for example, because here you see the bias distribution on the left of like this is a very liberal carriage story. For Putin, Trump summit is key to securing Ukraine goals. Now, this is going to make the argument that really it's all about like what Putin is doing and how he's going to carry the day and that sort of thing. Okay, let's look at it. A summit between Presidents Putin and Trump is planned to discuss peace in Ukraine amid ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. The summit follows Trump's actions, cutting weapon supplies to Kyiv, and his public insults toward Ukrainian President Zelensky, complicating U.S. support. Now, that was a while ago, all those things, but it's still something that they're talking about. A little bit more. The summit may allow Putin to sway Trump toward accepting Russia's demands, which could affect Ukraine's future, sovereignty, and regional security. Okay, so that's the left-leaning news. I'm not making this up. Here's the right-leaning news. It's 100% on the right. Vladimir Putin ready for bombshell Zelensky move as Trump moves nuclear subs. Okay, so it's already a different headline, but look at what's contained within it. Look at this again. Vladimir Putin is open to a meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. U.S. President Donald Trump has pressured Putin to agree to a ceasefire and negotiate to an end of the war, threatening tariffs if a deal is not reached. Okay, so depending on who you're listening to, you're seeing it this way or you're seeing it that way, which is why I encourage you to like listen to multiple sides of things and try to understand from multiple places who's saying what and what's actually going on. Because if you listen to different voices, you get different reactions or different understanding of what's going on. Okay, now breaking. Let's try to work our way through some of this. Breaking. White House says Putin must meet Zelensky before Trump. Putin must first hold talks with Zelensky, according to Politico. Well, that sounded promising. And then we see Trump denies media reports. Putin does not need to meet Zelensky in order to meet with Trump. Okay, so which is it? Well, it sounds like the latter because that's what Trump said very clearly. Trump administration sources revealed the White House is actively organizing a three-way presidential summit that could bring together U.S., Ukraine, and Russia's president as early as next week. But then we see things that it looks like it's just going to be bilateral between Trump and Putin, and Zelensky won't be there. And then they're trying to figure out where they're going to have it. Is it going to be Rome or the United Arab Emirates? Trump and Putin may meet as soon as next Monday, but who knows exactly where? And then Fox News reports that it could be Rome, Hungary, Switzerland, or the UAE as possible locations. And then Putin confirms that it's the UAE that could host this meeting. And so it looks like it's going to be the UAE. Okay, Kremlin-linked voices push chaos inside Trump's team as Russia braces for sanctions. So Kremlin-linked voices, those that are trying to do Russia's bidding, are trying to show that it's all chaos within inside Trump's team. This is from the Euromaidan press. Russian propagandists are actively fueling schisms within Trump administration ahead of the 8 August sanctions deadline. A little bit more. Recent messaging cast Trump as unstable while elevating his envoy, Witkoff, as a more rational figure. Yeah, they like Witkoff. They want more of that. The ISW noted that Russia has long used such tactics to sow distrust between Ukraine and its partners. Now the same methods are being applied to exploit schisms within the Trump administration in hopes of extracting concessions or weakening Washington's negotiating position without meeting Trump's preconditions for peace. Okay, so that's really interesting because it looks like Rubio and Kellogg are really have had Trump's ear for, in recent days, and maybe not so much the Secretary of Defense, the DNI, and Witkoff. So that's what's been happening there so far. Will that change? Did that change with Witkoff just recently? We just don't know. For the first time, the White House has an understanding of Russia's peace terms, according to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. That's kind of weird because we understood the peace terms were Russia gets everything and Ukraine gets nothing. Here, we've gone from talking about American ultimatums and deadlines to let's have a summit. So Putin was meeting with in the UAE, and he was making statements. We have many friends, Vladimir Putin said, ready to help organize such an event. The president of the United Arab Emirates is one of them, but he didn't confirm a venue. Later, it seemed like he did confirm a venue. Putin and Trump haven't met since I think 2018. Okay, now there's different opinions about what's going to happen. Here's a pretty strong argument of why Putin won't meet with Zelensky. It's from Sean Pinner. Putin fears direct confrontation with Zelensky, not because of personal danger, but because a face-to-face would expose the false narrative he's been spending years building, that Ukraine is just a pawn and Zelensky is irrelevant. A meeting would legitimize both. Putin gains nothing from such a meeting. It's like there's no benefit for Putin to do that. He's not interested in negotiation, only submission. I think that's fair. A photo op with Zelensky would show parity, not dominance. And if Zelensky stood firm, as he would, Putin risks looking weak. And there's nothing worse to an autocrat than looking weak. Zelensky's a threat to Kremlin propaganda. Putin sells the idea of denazification and Ukrainian collapse and a puppet regime. Zelensky is a Jewish leader, elected wartime leader, with global recognition. He shatters all of that. Standing beside him would be a propaganda disaster. The UK and Europe have proven to be less appeasing than the US, which is why Putin wants a one-on-one with Trump rather than with Trump and Zelensky or Trump, Zelensky, and European leaders. Britain especially has been consistently hawkish, supplying weapons, rallying support, and calling out Russian war crimes. Putin does not want them at the table because they won't trade away Ukraine. I think that's fair. Russia's best chance at a deal is to isolate the U.S. and broker something behind closed doors. Putin wants a pause, not peace, time to rearm, regroup, and rewrite history. A summit with Zelensky or abroad, unified Western front threatens that. So he dodges meetings, delays talks, and continues manipulating Trump. Okay, we'll see if peace talks happen, if Putin's willing to show up, and if he does show up, if it'll just be him and Trump or just what. What about Zelensky, he's asked when he's meeting with the UAE. Will the meeting be with him? Putin says, I've already said many times that I have nothing against him, that's Zelensky. It is possible, but certain conditions must be created for this, and unfortunately, such conditions have not yet been created. Okay, which means I'm not going to meet with Zelensky, so maybe Pinner's onto something there. Okay, after Putin's talks with Witkoff, Moscow has begun exploring which territories it might relinquish or compromise on, according to RBC. Okay, and then there were other reports along these lines that, we're willing to negotiate the territories from the Russian side. That could put Ukraine in an awkward place. But again, and that's assuming that this is legitimate news, that this is the signal, not the noise. Putin remains uninterested in ending his war, according to the ISW, and is attempting to extract bilateral concessions from the United States without meaningfully engaging in a peace process. Sounds fair. Ukraine is open to a ceasefire, but not recognizing territorial losses. Ukraine's constitution prohibits the president or parliament from unilaterally changing the country's borders. Okay, so that's where Ukraine is. The U.S. and Russia are discussing a deal on Ukraine that would require Kyiv to withdraw its forces from the entire territory of Donetsk and Luhansk, according to Bloomberg reports. Okay, according to Bloomberg News, that they're reporting that. Putin is demanding the surrender of all of Donetsk, all of Luhansk, in exchange for halting the offensive in Kherson and Zaporizhia regions and stopping at the current front line. Withdrawal of Ukrainian forces from Donetsk would be a major victory for Putin. And Zelensky's not going to do that, I don't think. Previously, Putin had demanded the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from all of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. but maybe he's just going to settle for less, even though he said this is permanently part of Russia from now on and in forever. Okay. Now, what's interesting about all this is Ukraine's been real quiet about this. There's been no reaction from Ukrainian authorities, at least not up to the time that I'm shooting this video. So Putin's trying to set conditions for peace to control the control over parts of Ukraine. The upcoming meeting with Trump, Putin may propose retaining control over some of the occupied territories in exchange for withdrawing troops from others. According to the news, Trump might try to persuade Ukraine and its allies to accept the deal, but Kyiv and European capitals are likely to reject such a plan. So Trump seems to be the weak link here. I don't know. He has zagged a little bit, but will he zig back the other direction? Could be. We just don't know. Time will tell. Trump would then have an excuse to blame Ukraine for prolonging the war if Russia says, well, we'll concede this, and Ukraine is unwilling to concede. It looks like then Russia's being the reasonable one, not Ukraine. In this scenario, the Wall Street Journal writes, the U.S. could halt military and intelligence support for Ukraine, and that would just be a disaster. Okay, so that's one scenario. Now, the U.S. and Russia have been discussing a deal that would cement Moscow's territorial gains, possibly, right? If that is true, it's a gift to Russia. Even if it doesn't come to pass, Putin pockets tacit U.S. recognition of the land grab, impunity for war crimes, prospect for sanctions relief. How could Zelensky possibly agree? What's to stop Putin from attacking in the future? That's all great questions. So Michael Carpenter, he's from the IISS. Absolutely spot on. That's great analysis. Okay. Meanwhile, there's also a poll. 76% of Ukrainians reject Russia's peace plan that demands territorial concessions and military disarmament. And it is their country. They should be the ones having the say, not necessarily what Trump says or what Putin says. Okay. ISW, again, any agreement less than full and long-term cessation in long-range strikes against civilian infrastructure will pose a great threat to Ukraine's civilian population and infrastructure upon the expiration of the agreement. Yeah, Russia will just start again, keep doing the same stuff that it was doing before, and why not? Because it can. Gary Kasparov says any so-called peace deal made between Putin and Trump will only be a brief timeout before the continuation of Putin's larger war against the West. He'll expand his corruption and propaganda campaigns while rearming for the next invasion phase. I think time has proved that that is what would happen. And then here's the former Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. saying that Russia's readiness for negotiations is an info tactic to avoid sanctions. That's all it is. He cautioned that the U.S. may pressure Ukraine to accept Russia's terms, potentially leading to legalized occupation. And we got to be careful to avoid that. Even Orban is getting this. Like, think about the irony there. Orban, as usual, is urging Europe to urgently sit down for talks with Russia. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban said that the German Chancellor and French President should go to Moscow together to organize a meeting with Putin on neutral ground. Go to Moscow to organize a meeting with Putin on neutral ground to negotiate on behalf of Europe. So Moscow's neutral ground, huh? We need a Russia-Europe summit because the war is happening in Europe and we must take the initiative. Hey, I mean, even a broken clock is right twice a day. There's Orban. And this was an interesting comment from the creator of Vatnik Soup. Whatever happened to the Coalition of the Willing? Right? We haven't heard a peep about them from them in months. What happened to them? Where are they? What happened to this army that they were creating for afterwards? Kind of fizzled out. Well, Orban's got his own problems right now. Viktor Orban was caught lying about his family's 30 million euro estate. He claimed it's just his dad's not yet functional farm, but an energy permit found by opposition MP shows that it has residential functions. Here's an earlier doc on the mansion. Like, I could live in that kind of farm. I don't know that they're growing anything there, but I mean, I could do that. Okay. Trump's ultimatum to Putin expires today. This is the next big thing, right? This is a day where it's supposed to change. And tomorrow, or as of midnight tonight, sanctions should be imposed if he doesn't come to the table. Just yesterday, Trump made it clear that potential new sanctions against Russia depend on the Kremlin's actions. I don't think that means I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that that means like if Putin can persuade me. I think it means if Putin doesn't come to the table, then these new sanctions can kick in. But I think Putin's not going to come to the table, and these sanctions will kick in. Witkoff is a busy guy. Is there absolutely no one else in the Trump administration who could help carry the load of ending wars? Says Michael McFall. Great question. Like, why is Witkoff everywhere? Here he is with the head of Azerbaijan. I don't understand why Witkoff is this involved. Like, pick a lane and stay in it. With President Trump's deadline for Putin today, he made phone calls with leaders of China, Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Uzbekistan. We don't know what they said, but I mean, I think he's just trying to rally some support. Meanwhile, President Zelensky spoke with the president of South Africa, and it was a friendly, candid conversation about how to achieve peace. He shared details about his conversation, the president of South Africa did, with about the Russian side. Ukraine's position is absolutely clear. The path to peace must begin with a ceasefire, and Zelensky says they're ready for this. So, okay. Now let's turn to our third big story, India. So when the sanctions kick in, it's really going to affect India, China, Brazil, and India has had 25% sanctions added, and then another 25% sanctions added on that. And then this is going to go to 100%. Well, so tariffs is what I mean by the sanctions. The sanctions mean 25% tariff, and then another tariff, and then the 100% tariff. Okay. So India has suspended purchases of American weapons and canceled the defense minister's visit to the United States. They're kind of over us. New Delhi has scaled back plans to buy weapons and aircraft from the U.S., according to Reuters, citing sources. India has planned to send Defense Minister Singh to Washington in the coming weeks, but the trip was canceled. According to the outlet, the decisions express India's dissatisfaction with tariffs imposed by the United States. Earlier, Donald Trump imposed an additional 25% on Indian goods. Additional means that there was already 25% there. Over the past week, Russia's seaborne oil exports to India have increased by more than 1.5 times. But what will happen tomorrow? Will it decrease tomorrow? That's the literally million-dollar question for both India and Russia. But it doesn't look like Modi has any appetite to slow down. He put this out. Had a very good and detailed conversation with my friend, President Putin. Wait, I thought you were all against war and suffering and that sort of thing, but when it comes to oil, you're okay with that, right? I mean, cheap oil? I thanked him for sharing the latest developments on Ukraine. We also reviewed the progress in our bilateral agenda and reaffirmed our commitment to further deepen the India-Russia special and privileged strategic partnership. Okay, with my friend, President Putin. Gary Kasparov replied, "Your friend Vladimir Putin, the genocidal war criminal? Your friend who would sell you out and the entire Indian nation at any time to prolong his dictatorship by one more hour." Got to be careful who your friends are, Modi. Okay. Last little bit, U.S. has begun talks with Asian countries to replace Russian oil and gas with American supplies. Energy Secretary Chris Wright told Fox Business. He said that the U.S. is already redirecting energy to Europe and is discussing similar deals in Asia, though it's too early for talks to start with India. Okay. That's all the news. And then this is interesting because it was 8808. That's today's date. Well, today's date is 8825, but 8808, 17 years ago, Russia invaded Georgia. While Putin was admiring the opening of the Olympics in Beijing, his troops were invading in a neighboring country. What lessons the world did not learn after August 2008? Well, first, Putin will not stop at one victim. It's impossible to appease Putin. War is an issue not only for the parties to the conflict, but for the whole world, and the maniac only understands force. That's right. So if you didn't learn it in 2004, and you didn't learn it in 2008, and you didn't learn it in 2014, and you didn't learn it in 2022, it just keeps going. Here's a little bit more about Georgia. Russian invasion led to hundreds of deaths, thousands of refugees, many wounded. The consequences of this so-called independence of South Ossetia with the Russian world have been catastrophic. The republic's population has nearly halved and continues to decline. The average salary in South Ossetia is about $200, while in Georgia it's 3 times higher at $610. Citizens of the self-proclaimed republic face semi-legal status even in Russia and are deprived of rights and freedoms and have a cost of living, including food prices, significantly higher than in neighboring regions. So that's what the Russian world brings to, well, when it absorbs other areas of other sovereign countries. And so what did we do immediately thereafter? Well, the United States, just months after Russia invaded Georgia, set the reset button. Remember the famous reset button that Hillary Clinton brought to Lavrov? Yeah. And it looks like we're trying to do that again. We just don't seem to learn our lessons. All right. But this is Georgia, and the Georgians have learned their lessons. The demonstration is now on for the 253rd day of protest. So good on the Georgians for that. Okay, last little bit tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, board members, Patreon board members. I sent you all the Zoom link. And by the way, Michael from UK just joined us. I sent you this Zoom link as well. So we'll hope to see you there as well tomorrow. If you are on a podcast listening and you'd like to listen to my podcast on Apple or Podbean or Spotify or Amazon, Audible, iHeartRadio, I'm there. Tune me in at just Professor Gerdes Explains, and you can listen rather than watch me. All right. This whole thing, everything that we're up to feels like this guy. This is a 34-year-old professional cliff jumper. His name is Jeremy Nicolin. He leaps from a 31-meter high bridge over a canyon. And this is the greatest metaphor I can give you for what it feels like where we are today. Like he's just testing it. Okay, that looks right. And is he going to do it? Yeah, he is. And he's got like a GoPro or something here. I don't think I'd be doing this. Yeah, that's what it feels like right now, looking over the abyss into what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay, my friends, thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.